Mark sighed and looked out the night sky. He was standing on the roof of his apartment building, 4 stories up. Sometimes Mark just liked to stay up there and reflect. It was quiet and peaceful. Looking down, you could see the normal hustle and bristle of the city life. But if you looked up, you could see a beautiful sky, sometimes even a full moon or some stars. Mark walked along the border of the roof that helped keep him from falling to his death. It was pretty late, so he was going to go back to his apartment soon. Then he saw something waving in the wind a few meters away. Mark walked over and picked it up, seeing it was today's newspaper, and began to read the front page. Young man found dead near woods. Earlier today, John Parkers, age 20, was found dead near the northern woods. His family stated that he had never had any real enemies, but he was a little bit of a troublemaker. Still, they did not know who would want him dead. His death seemed to be caused by blood loss. The scars seemed to be from a large animal, but was later found out to not be the cause, as a symbol was found carved in the man's forehead. The symbol was the... Mark put the newspaper down where he found it. He didn't want an article like that ruining his night. He walked along the border with his arm on it, looking up at the sky. 20 years, so young. He felt sorry for the kid. He himself was nearly 30. He thought of all the things the man would never be able to do now that his life was gone. Mark tried to get it out of his head. He didn't want to be depressed. Without knowing it, Mark's hand bumped an empty cardboard box that was on the edge. He tried to catch it, but it was too late. It was sent falling down towards the street. It was odd. He didn't see any cars. Only one lonely person walking along the sidewalk. "Hey, watch out!" he cried, but it was a bit too late. The box fell on the person's head. Well, at least it was just an empty cardboard box. He was about to call down his apologies when what happened next made him freeze. The person who was on the sidewalk looked up at him. He had a black hoodie and a black and white striped scarf. That, of course, was not what made him freeze. The person also had a particular mask, half pitch black, half luminescent white. He managed to get back his voice as he was going to shout his apologies. Maybe this guy was just out from a strange party or gathering when he was yet again frozen with what he saw. The man said something that Mark couldn't quite hear. Then he jumped onto the wall. He began climbing up the side of the building, similar to the style of a spider or a lizard. Mark was just frozen, mouth agape, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. The strange man, no, monster, reached the top of the building and crouched on the border's edge. Mark now saw how he was able to climb on the building so easily. He was wearing white gloves, but they were long, black, cat-like claws extending from the end of each finger through the gloves. He saw that the mask had a face on it, but only half a face. On the white side of the mask, there was the shape of an angry-looking eye and a mouth curved into a frown. They just stared at each other. It was only for a few seconds, but to Mark, it felt like an eternity. Then something strange happened. The monster's mask changed. The angry mouth and eye disappeared. On the black side of the mask appeared a happy eye and a strange smile. The monster cocked its head back to one side and said... Mark screamed and ran towards the little door leading to the inside of the building. He prayed that the monster wasn't following him. He reached the door and threw it open, bolted inside and slammed it shut. Panting, he leaned up against the door to shut it. After a while, he wondered if the monster was still there, and why he didn't try to force the door open. He had no idea what it said to him, but there was something odd about the way it said it. It seemed happy and playful, but also angry and malicious. He gathered up the courage and decided to open the door. Putting one hand on the knob, he took a deep breath, slowly opened the door, ready for whatever was on the other side. Mark expected to find himself face to face with the odd mask. Instead, he saw the monster was still there where he had left him, sitting on the edge of the roof and smiling that odd and somewhat malicious smile. The monster said again. Mark slammed the door shut again. His legs fell from beneath him and he sat on the floor. He didn't like the way the monster said those things to him. He sat there for a while, trying to make sense of what had happened. Well, it was late. Maybe he fell asleep on the roof and had a nightmare. He decided to check one more time. Mark stood up and slowly opened the door. Part of him said that the monster would be in the exact same spot, say the same thing. The other part told him that the monster would be right in front of the door, claws unsheathed and ready to slash. He was wrong. The monster was gone. It was nothing but the light of the city and the sound of the few cars driving by. He let out a sigh of relief. It was all just a dream. The door slammed shut in his face. He made a sound of pain as the metal door whacked him on the forehead. Mark rubbed his head and fell to the ground. "What the hell was that?" he shouted to no one in particular. He didn't close the door, even if he wasn't that clumsy. The wind wasn't that strong enough to close it. He told himself that maybe it was just a freak gust of wind. His mind quickly digressed when he heard the laughing again. The noise came from right outside the door, a little above it. A monster must have been standing on top of it. Mark woke up confused. He was in his apartment, in his bed. He looked around to see if it really was his place. It was. He sighed again. It must have been all a dream. One of those odd dreams that you could have sworn were real because it felt so real. But then you realized it must have been a dream because it was so odd. Mark laughed to himself a little, as if monsters actually existed. A sudden pain in his forehead appeared, which made him stop. Maybe it was real, and he just didn't remember coming back down. Mark quickly dismissed the idea. Maybe he'd fallen down in his sleep and gotten back up again. Things like that happen. Mark got up and went to the fridge to get something to drink. Grabbing a glass on his way there, he opened up a carton of orange juice to have for breakfast. He tilted the carton to pour into a glass when the juice spilled out of the container. He paused and stared at it, confused. Then he realized that there was a thin gash on the side of the carton, so that when it was tilted, the juice didn't reach the top, but spilled to the slit instead. There it was again. It came from inside the apartment. He turned around quickly, scanning the room for the monster. Then he stopped, realizing how paranoid and foolish he was being. He was obviously imagining it. The cut in the carton, his girlfriend could have done that. He'd recently gotten into a fight with her. Mark cleaned up the mess and decided he wasn't going to have anything for breakfast. He didn't feel like eating. He was worried how he was going to make up to his girlfriend Beatrice. He loved her and wanted her to understand how much he loved her. He turned on the television and watched for a couple of hours, forgetting his troubles. It was now noon. He got up and walked to the kitchen, leaving the television on. He opened up the cabinet that he kept his alcohol in, taking out a bottle of beer. He poured some into a glass and nearly dropped the bottle when he saw that it wasn't beer. It was just plain water. He frowned and drank a little bit to check, and it was just plain water. He stared at it angrily and grabbed another bottle, then another, and another. Their contents had all been replaced with just normal water. He sighed angrily, and there it was again. Mark jumped a little. It was just that laughter again. He told himself again and again that he was just imagining it. He was just getting paranoid because his dream felt so real. Beatrice couldn't have done this too. There was no monster. He dug around the cabinet to see if there was anything left in there. In the back, he knew there were 2 bottles of wine and 1 bottle of champagne, but he wanted to save those for when Beatrice forgave him. He saw the bottles and was about to close the cabinet when he had to do a double take. One of the bottles of wine were missing. Mark looked at where he kept the wine glasses, and one of them was missing too. Beatrice could have done this too. She was pretty mad, Mark said to himself quietly. He swore to himself that he would make it up to her, even if it was the last thing he ever did. He heard it again. It came from the living room, where he left the television on. He knew he hadn't imagined it this time. That laughter was real. He closed the cabinet shut and ran into the room. Sure enough, there was the monster. He was sitting on the couch drinking a glass of wine, watching television that had been left on. The monster paused and looked up at Mark, smiling. It picked up another bottle of wine in one hand and shook it a little towards him. Mark paused, staring at the monster. He quickly snapped out of it and ran back to the kitchen as quickly as possible, as he could. It was real. He really expected the monster to get up and come after him, to kill and eat him, because that's what monsters do. The monster remained in there. He could hear it laughing at him. Mark was afraid. He had to get out of this place and get it out of his life. He looked around the kitchen to find something to use. Panicking, he grabbed the nearest knife as he could and ran back to the living room, ready to fight. The monster was gone. There was no trace. The evidence was the missing bottle of wine and the wine glass. He tensed up. Maybe he was going crazy because of that dream. No, I'm not crazy. That can't happen. It won't happen. I won't let it. He rambled to himself. He went back into the kitchen and put the knife away. He walked back to the living room and sat on the couch, picking up the remote and turned off the TV to think. Maybe I'm hallucinating. Maybe I'm going crazy because I'm depressed because Beatrice is mad at me. The strange dream just happened to mix with it. Mark got up and grabbed the phone to call her. He dialed her number and waited for her to pick up. Mark was so excited about making it up to her that he didn't notice someone slipped through the window and watch him. Hi, Beatrice? It's me. Sorry about the fight we had. No, I'm really sorry. I promise I'll make it up to you. I swear I'll... He set the phone down. She had hung up. Only then did he see something in the corner of his eye, but when he turned back, it was gone. I'm going to make it up to her, he told himself, grabbing his jacket and putting it on. I'm going to apologize in person. Mark paced around the apartment, thinking of what he was going to give to her. Then he realized and opened the cabinet to grab the bottle of champagne. But when he opened, the bottle was gone. He thought to himself that his sincere apology would be enough and went out the door to see her. Mark walked along quickly, rehearsing what he was going to say. The entire time he was walking, he felt that someone was following him. He told himself that he was just being nervous. Mark reached her house and stood in front of the steps. He was afraid that she wasn't going to forgive him and break up with him. He reached out first to knock on the door, but quickly drew back. He was afraid. Mark sighed and swore under his breath, telling him that he was a coward. He turned around and walked away, not noticing that the laugh that happened right behind him, followed by the sound of an opening window. Mark left the bar he was at. He had come to this bar to have a little bit of a drink before he faced Beatrice, but didn't feel like drinking at all and hardly touched what he had bought. Mark told himself that he would go and apologize like a man and set off towards her house. Mark reached out his fist and knocked on the door loudly. He waited. No one answered. He pressed the doorbell several times and could hear it ring through the house. Still, no one answered. Getting worried, he knocked on the door and shouted her name. Still, no one answered. He tried the doorknob, and it opened. It was odd. She usually kept the door locked. The first thing he noticed was when he entered, the door was open. The wooden boarding on the sides of it seemed to have a lot of claw marks on it, like a cat had been here. He walked into the dining room, calling out her name. He paused when he saw the bottle of champagne on the table. It was the bottle that he'd had in his cabinet. It was open. He picked it up and examined it. There was a note taped to the side of it. The note read, Beatrice, I'm so sorry about our fight. I really want to make it up to you because I love you with all my heart and soul. Mark. Mark stared at the note, looking at the little heart following the word soul. He didn't remember sending this to her. Beatrice? He shouted. He walked around the table and his blood ran cold. He saw her, his darling Beatrice, on the floor. She wasn't moving. Shards of broken glass around her. Beatrice! Mark shouted and fell to the floor to pick her up, ignoring the cuts given to him by the shards of glass. He saw from the shapes of them that they were from the wine glass. Tears streamed in his face and he hugged her. He knew she was dead. That's so sweet of him. Mark paused and looked up. There it was, the monster. It was sitting in the windowsill, intimidating her voice. I'm so sorry we had the fight in the first place. Mark stared at it, anger boiling inside. Then she drank it. Then she died. It's poison. It laughed hard, putting its hands up to his face to try and stop. You think this is funny? You killed her. I'll kill you. He stood up and grabbed the bottle. Mark threw the bottle, but the monster jumped out the window before it reached it. He was going to kill it. He would make it pay. Mark walked over to Beatrice's dresser. He knew she had kept a pistol in self-defense. He pulled it out and opened the clip, seeing that there were only 4 bullets left. That was all right. He only needed 1. Mark ran out the door. There was no sign of the monster anywhere. He knew it was going back to his apartment, though. Mark ran as fast as he could, ignoring the crosswalk signs of other people, and just ran. He reached his apartment building and ran up to his floor, slamming the door open to his apartment. He was right. The monster was there. He was lying on top of the bookshelf, holding a glass of wine, the wine bottle in the other hand. Mark flew in a fit of rage and pointed the gun towards it, shooting a bullet. It sprung up and jumped to the wall, leaving the wine glass and clinging to it with its claws so that its back was facing Mark. He shot a second time, and it flipped over so it was now facing Mark. Its left arm and leg dangled further than a normal human's. He shot again and it dropped to the floor, now on all fours. Mark shot yet again, and it did a roll to dodge. Then it jumped onto the wall, staying there and staring at him. Mark walked over to it angrily and pointed the pistol towards its forehead. He pulled the trigger, but it only made a clank, indicating there were no more bullets. The monster began to laugh. Mark was enraged and swung the gun towards it in melee attack, but the monster crawled to its side, picking up the wine glass where it had left it on the bookshelf. It threw the wine glass at Mark. Mark dodged it. Then it threw the wine bottle and hit him square into the eyes. Mark passed out. Mark regained consciousness. He was face to face with the monster. It was clinging to the ceiling, its arms and legs bending back at a 90-degree angle so it was facing him. Its mask changed again. The luminescent smile on the dark side of the mask disappeared, and the angry frown reached on the white side of its mask. Then he said in a dark voice, lacking the happy, pitiful of before. It made a low growling, hissing sound and pounced. Later in the day, the police arrived at Mark's apartment. A neighbor had called because they had heard gunshots. Mark was found dead, claw marks all over his body and his throat clawed out. The kill seemed animal, and the claw marks were found along the walls and ceiling. Bloody footprints were found headed towards the window, so it was determined that it was done by a human. Upon further inspection of the body, they found something carved into the skin of his forehead.